Thick gray clouds concealed the sun, painting the sky in varying shades of ash. These clouds were not born of ordinary weather, but from the omnipresent pall of dust and smoke that had hovered since the world below was left uninhabitable. In the remnants of what might once have been a blazing blue sky, colossal airships drifted as lonely sentinels, carrying the last fragments of humanity in their steel bellies. Each ship housed a microcosm of survivors, striving to eke out life in a place where the horizon offered no horizon, only a perpetual swirl of haze and sorrow. Ines sat on a grated metal walkway, dangling her legs over the edge. A labyrinth of pipes and cables clung to the underside of the airship like the roots of an ancient tree, throbbing with the hum of machinery. She thought about how her grandparents once spoke of open fields, roaring waterfalls, and endless forests that spanned the land below. Such tales felt like folklore, half true at best. If such wonders had indeed existed, they were now lost beneath the wasteland. Even so, the longing in her chest persisted, an ache for solidity underfoot and a blue dome overhead. The airship's decks were crowded with makeshift dwellings, cramped corridors, and communal areas where survivors tried to maintain some echo of civilization. Families and individuals milled about, steeped in routines born of necessity. Ration lines for the morning meal, machine maintenance schedules, and impromptu trading stalls where people bartered trinkets or fresh produce grown in the hydroponic bays. Months, sometimes years passed without glimpsing a single speck of land, yet hope remained afloat like the ships themselves. Ennis believed that out there, hidden within the swirling dust storms, might lie a habitable patch of earth waiting to welcome them. She believed it, even when her cry for optimism was drowned out by cynics who mocked her idealism. Her younger brother Ferris emerged from a tangle of pipes covered in soot from his morning shift cleaning dust filters. He slid next to her, letting his legs swing over the edge. "Captain's on edge," he said. "We're decelerating for a systems check soon. Another engine valve is causing trouble." He clutched a small journal in his grease-smeared fingers. It was a logbook he meticulously kept, filled with sketches of what he imagined land to look like, a place of rolling hills and deep lakes, forests bursting with birdsong. "I hate the idea of slowing down. We're running low on certain supplies. We need to find land or another airship to trade with." Behind them, the swirl of dark clouds and dust turned dull gold as the sun attempted to peek through. Looking at that strange glow, Ennis sighed. "We have to keep going," she said. "If we can't fix that valve, we won't survive in this sky. Every piece of machinery needs to keep working. A single failure can bring us down." Ever since Ennis was old enough to walk, she'd help with the vessel's routine maintenance, polishing the corroded pipes and checking for cracks in the hull. She excelled at reading the changing colors in the sky, using them to predict when roiling storms would strike. On one such day many years ago, the ship's survival had come down to her timely warning of an approaching tempest. It was a small victory, but survival in these times was counted by small mercies. Years earlier, stories had circulated among the survivors, rumors of a lush sector to the east where land somehow remained viable. Others told of islands that had survived the cataclysm, places shielded by mountains or environmental quirks that kept them from devastation. No one agreed on the details or even the direction, but they all clung to the possibility of escape from their ceaseless drift. That night, the airship's engines chugged at a waning tempo, their timbre a disquieting low drone. In the main deck hall, patched with riveted steel plates, the captain, a stout figure with a shock of white hair, stood atop a metal crate. A crowd of onlookers gathered, anxious for any scrap of news. "We've discovered partial meltdown in one of the lower engine assemblies," the captain announced, voice crackling through overhead speakers. "We must cease propulsion to attempt repairs. During this time, we'll be reliant on solar-charged backup propellants." An uneasy murmur spread. Everyone knew the backup system was not meant for long-term flight. Its solar panels needed direct sunlight, and sunshine was scarce behind the layers of dust. Fear flickered over the gathered faces, but the captain held a glint of determination in her eyes. "We have no option but to do this." The only way forward is to survive one day at a time until we find something better. Over the next few days, the ship drifted in haunting stillness. The hull shuddered whenever gusts of wind slammed into it, as though nature were trying to force the vessel down into the globe below. Ennis worked in the engine room, assisting the mechanics with the meltdown repair. Great arcs of sparks flew as they welded and replaced components. At night, in the cramped bunk where she slept, the air rang with a silence broken only by distant metallic groans. Yet through that silence came fleeting hints. The swirl of dust parted just enough that, momentarily, a pale patch of moonlight could illuminate the vast emptiness beneath. Sometimes, Ennis would climb a tower ladder to the top deck to watch the moon. She envisioned oceans below, the remains of cities or fields that still bore traces of greenery. With every passing day, her conviction deepened that something substantial had to be out there. As if in response to her hope, a rumor gained traction among the airship dwellers. Another vessel had been sighted on the horizon. Several watchers claimed that in the faint distance, through the haze, they saw the dim outline of a craft bigger than their own gliding across the sky. If it were true, it might mean a chance to pool resources, or at least glean information about possible destinations. Having learned of this rumor, Ennis felt her pulse quicken. She daydreamed about forging alliances. Perhaps their new neighbors had discovered land. The captain authorized a small scouting team, Ennis among them, to investigate. They piled onto a swift reconnaissance balloon, a rickety contraption twisted from steel frames and inflated with helium. That first moment of unfastening from the main ship and drifting away into the swirling dust felt like stepping into an untamed frontier. Although they could still see the colossal silhouette of their mothership behind them, it felt a world away. Inside the balloon, Ennis glanced at the navigation instruments. Their accuracy was questionable at best, battered by invisible magnetic anomalies left over from Earth's transformation. The thin air stung Ennis's nose. The dust-laden wind muffled the hum of the balloon's propellers, granting the gloom an eerie hush. She peered through binoculars in the direction the watchers had indicated. For a long while she saw only an endless curtain of swirling soot. Then, as if a curtain itself parted, a shape manifested. The lines of a massive airship came hazily into view, its hull reflecting the sparse moonlight. But even from a distance, something was off. The craft listed awkwardly, angling downward in a way that suggested it was sinking. She signaled to the others they should approach closer. They moved slowly, weaving between gusts until they could see the battered hull of the other ship. Whole sections were torn, venting steam hissed out of gashes in its underside. Ennis's breath caught as she realized one of its main engine pods had been entirely ripped away. The ship wasn't just adrift, it was crashing. Through the swirling dust, lights on its deck flickered erratically. Without hesitation, Ennis directed the reconnaissance balloon alongside the damaged vessel. As they neared, the sound of grinding metal rose into a cacophony. The mooring lines they tossed were quickly seized by desperate hands. Figures in torn jackets, eyes wild with panic, emerged from hatchways. Once the lines were secure, Ennis scrambled aboard. Her boots rapped on metal that felt alarmingly warm, as if the internal systems were on the verge of meltdown. Acrid smoke filled her lungs. She coughed, covering her face with a rag. "Help us!" someone shouted, face streaked with dirt and terror. "Our engines are failing, and the stabilizers are gone. Evacuation's almost impossible. We have only a few lifeboats and half are unusable. Please, let us board your balloon." Others pleaded in frantic whispers or sobs. Ennis realized that her small balloon could carry only so many. To save them all would be impossible. Her teammates huddled, discussing possibilities. A single run with the balloon wouldn't hold the entire population of the dying airship. The rescue had to be strategic. Perhaps they could shuttle people back and forth. But the main vessel was far, and the battered craft was rapidly sinking. The group came up with a plan. Gather as many as they could on the balloon, then attempt to repair the smaller lifeboats. Ennis volunteered to assist with the repairs. They raced against time. While the balloon took off with the first group of refugees, Ennis and a few mechanics sprinted to the twisted remains of the lifeboats in a lower cargo bay. Sparks rained from flickering lights overhead. They set to work, prying off smashed panels and welding new ones where they could. All the while, the ship's supports groaned, telling them the vessel was inching ever closer to the unknown terrain below. Just as the balloon returned for a second trip, they managed to patch up 2 lifeboats barely flight-worthy, but enough to lift their weight. Adrenaline propelled everyone forward. Just when Innes believed they might manage the rescue, the catastrophic sound of steel tearing reverberated through the corridors. She stumbled. The hull had begun splitting in earnest. A scream echoed from somewhere. The captain of the sinking ship, a rail-thin man with vacant eyes, gripped her shoulders. "Take our maps," he gasped, thrusting a battered leather satchel into her hands. "We might help you. We had leads on possible land sightings. Don't let this be for nothing." Then he turned and urged his remaining crew toward the lifeboats. Innes felt the weight of that satchel, realized the magnitude of what it could mean. She stuffed it into her vest. Her heart thundered as she dashed for the lifeboat bay. The second lifeboat had just taken off. Another group crowded near the last serviceable craft. She squeezed in, her shoulders pressed against strangers, inhaling the heavy stench of fear. A jolt of thrust kicked them off the deck, launching the lifeboat shakily into the air. Through a portal, Innes witnessed the final moments of the dying ship. An immense structure sinking beneath the swirling dust, fiery sparks hailing from its engines. A swirl of blackness swallowed it from view. When she reached her home vessel, she staggered onto the deck with the captain's maps pressed tight against her chest. The entire rescue effort had left everyone shaken. Dozens of rattled refugees were offloaded onto the main ship. Some dissolved into tears, some stared blankly, having lost everything once again. After assisting with the intake of the survivors, Innes retreated to a quiet corner behind the cargo bay. She carefully unlatched the satchel. The documents within were well worn, with pages frayed at the edges. Drawings and charts depicted swirling weather systems, star patterns, and rough calculations of latitudes and longitudes. Scribbled notes mentioned sightings of green patches or areas less choked by dust. Addressing no one in particular, she whispered, "This is the closest thing to a compass we have." She spent the following weeks poring over these charts. Though incomplete, they offered tantalizing glimpses of a rumored set of islands. According to one page, an unknown vessel had claimed to see a swath of turquoise water in a narrow beach. The text was scrawled hastily. Green coverage on the shoreline might indicate vegetation, coordinates uncertain. That single line was enough to reignite her hope. She shared her findings with the captain. A subdued excitement rippled through the community aboard their ship. Yet, a somber caution remained. It was not the first time they'd chased illusions. They had done so time and again, each quest leading them to only open sky and swirling dust. But while cynicism lingered, the new refugees from the sunken airship fueled the fire of optimism. Some claimed to have heard transmissions from other surviving communities. Others spoke of pockets of land that might still be breathing. Even if each rumor was a solitary puzzle piece, it was enough to push the ship forward. Months passed. The main engine meltdown was resolved, the vessel once more gliding steadily. More storms battered them, torrential bursts of dusty winds that dimmed what little daylight they had. Each tempest tested their resilience. Innes pressed onward, refining the course using the salvage charts, conferring with navigators and reading stars. The swirling sky seemed infinite, yet a slow shift was occurring. The dust storms, while still furious, didn't last as long. The sun's glow each morning felt a bit brighter. It was as if they were sailing beyond the worst zones. On the top deck, a new greenhouse module thrived, thanks to seeds and horticultural knowledge from the rescued folks. Lettuce, beans, and tomatoes sprouted under harsh grow lights. The fresh produce invigorated the entire community, a small but vital boon. Morale improved. Children played games in the corridors, their laughter echoing across the hull, reminding everyone of what remained precious. Innes's brother Ferris sketched in his logbook every day, now depicting images with a renewed sense of color, swirling green and hints of azure water. One dawn found Innes perched near the observation windows, scanning the horizon with binoculars. The ship advanced slowly through a thinning veil of dust. The dull red hue that had pervaded so many sunrises seemed to be fading, replaced by a paler, softer glow. Half lost in a reverie, she suddenly noticed the outline of shapes in the distance, small, dark lumps protruding through the haze. She instinctively froze, her breath caught. She carefully focused the binoculars, adjusting the lens with trembling fingers. Yes, they were definitely shapes. Large as they neared, they appeared to sprout from a central mass. It looked like something mountainous, or perhaps rolling hills. Heart hammering, Innes hurried to call the captain. In minutes, other watchers joined, scanning with their own instruments. Word spread like wildfire. There was land ahead. Jubilant shouts rang through the halls and decks. Some wept openly. Others hurried to gather vantage points. The ship's engines were pushed to gentle but steady power. The captain chose not to rush blindly for fear of unknown danger storms, torn currents, or even potential hostilities on the ground. Still, they advanced. As the day progressed, the lumps took on clearer definition. Great spires of rock rose from what appeared to be a broad plateau, partially shrouded by swirling dust. Ill-green brush clung precariously to the ridges. At the sight of even the smallest patch of vegetation, the crowd erupted in astonishment. They had dreamed of such a thing for so long that to see it, however drab or sparse, felt like a miracle. And beyond that ridge, they could see variations of color that hinted at possible water sources. The captain assembled a landing party. The airship hovered just above the plateau, lowering them in a cargo lift to set foot on solid ground for the first time in generations. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. The surface was cracked, the dust forming an ashen layer on top. Yet underneath, there was soil with hints of moisture. They spread out slowly, each step a risk. Some wore oxygen masks, uncertain of toxicity levels. Trees, scraggly, stunted still, managed to stand amidst the rubble. A hush gripped the group. After a lifetime of floating, the feeling of actual ground beneath their boots was almost disorienting. When Innes knelt, removing her glove to place her hand on the gritty soil, tears sprang to her eyes. For the first time, she felt the earth's coolness. Though battered, it was undeniably alive. A few yards away, Ferris brushed dust off a scraggly tuft of grass, bright green in the morning light. They scoured the plateau carefully, finding scattered pockets of life. Low-growing shrubs, small pools of water tinted brown, but not entirely foul. The presence of even small insects caused startled gasps. Some tried to collect water samples to analyze back on the airship. Others rummaged through half-buried debris signs of a settlement that had once existed. Stone foundations, maybe a piece of a crumbled statue, echoes of the old world. Soon more teams arrived. They pitched tents, set up sampling devices, tested the air for prolonged breathing. Tension coiled in everyone's muscles, uncertain if the ground might quake or sink at any moment. But the day stretched on peacefully. No sign of immediate danger. No hidden chasms. No swirling monsoons. It was quiet, so quiet they could hear every shuffle of rock beneath their feet. An assembly convened that afternoon. Under the flickering sunlight, the captain and senior crew members confided that, although the place was battered, it had potential. It might not be the paradise they had hoped for, no sprawling, lush forests or clean rivers, but it was real, tangible land. A battered but genuine start. The captain proposed establishing a long-term outpost, carefully expanding from there if the environment proved stable. It wasn't a unanimous decision. Some among the group feared risking everything on a piece of land that could turn inhospitable. Others wanted to keep searching for a more hospitable region. Tempers flared as frustration bubbled in those who had endured so many illusions. Yet for every doubt, there was another voice urging that they had finally found a place to sink roots. If they turned away now, would they regret it forever? Enna stood up, lifting her voice above the discord with more conviction than she'd ever summoned before. All of us have known only the air and the dust. We've watched our fuel supplies dwindle, our engines falter, and our spirits waver. Now we touch real ground. Even if it's uncertain, it's a gift. We should at least build here, learn from this land, and see if it can sustain us. We need to give ourselves a chance. The ancient unraveled the question, His uncertain saw nods. Even the refugees, whose language was still unfamiliar, nodded in agreement. The memory of the sinking ship still haunted them, reminding everyone that continuing an endless flight was no guarantee of safety. The captain met her gaze and finally spoke. "We'll do it carefully. A station, not a permanent abandonment of the airship. We can merge the best of both worlds for a while, scout the land, see if it can support more of our people. If it proves viable, we'll expand." Cheers erupted. With that decision, an electric sense of possibility coursed through the crowd. Flurries of activity commenced. Engineering teams studied the land to find stable points for mooring lines so the airship could remain tethered overhead. Others set up greenhouses on the ground, hoping that direct sunlight might boost crop yields. Mechanics tinkered with water filtration units, testing the murky pools. Scouts set out to examine the edges of the plateau, searching for pathways leading further inland. That night, Ennis stood on the plateau's edge with Ferris. From there, they could look outward at the swirling haze that defined the horizon. Their airship hovered above them like a silent guardian, its hull lit by the shimmering lamps that lined the deck. She removed her oxygen mask, inhaling thin but breathable air. Mountains, or perhaps hills, lay in the distance, their outlines worn by wind and dust. Yet, if she narrowed her eyes, she could glimpse glimmering specks further out. Could it be more water, or even a small lake? Ferris scribbled in his logbook, capturing every detail. A hush stretched between them, the night wind ruffling their hair. No one knew what tomorrow might bring. Radiation, storms, or hidden dangers might still lurk. Yet in that moment, the ground supported them, refusing to give way. Inez sensed something she hadn't felt in a long while, a steady undercurrent of hope. If they nurtured these scorched soils and made the right choices, perhaps they could coax life to flourish again. Maybe in time they would no longer need the airships drifting from horizon to horizon in an endless search. Together, brother and sister gazed up at the stars, faint but comforting through the thinning clouds. After countless miles of voyaging through the darkness of the sky, they had found a place where the dust parted. The earth was battered, yes, but not entirely ruined. One day, secreted beneath the ash and rubble, the land might yet heal, remembering the forests that once waved high and the waters that once sparkled blue. Inez closed her eyes, letting the wind brush her face. She imagined children running freely across grass, forging memories that did not involve steel walkways or the rumble of engine turbines. She envisioned entire families gathering around real campfires, not the stifling glow of fluorescent bulbs. Ghostly silhouettes of city ruins might stand as monuments to what was lost, but also as testament to resilience humanity had endured. Here beneath her boots was proof that the world had not fully died. Within that silent sky, they no longer needed to chase illusions. The ship's engines hummed nearby, a reminder of their wandering past, and perhaps a link to a future of wise coexistence. They had not escaped every threat, and the road to revival stretched unknown. But under that hush of stars, upon a patch of land real underfoot, there was a budding sense that they had taken the first step. The next chapter of humanity's story was still unwritten, but they would write it together, forging new tales in the dust and forging new roots in the earth they had rediscovered.